Len Robbins. So we'll get some turning analysis and maybe touch on some other things with the great Len Robbins. Literally, it's great to see you.
No one has ever looked at me and said those words, so I'm a little humbled and flattered. And although I will say, you guys set me up perfectly, because when I logged in, the last thing I heard you say was disparaging remarks. And then you said, up next is Len Robbins. All right, well, we've set the parameters for this show.
The time.
Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Very pleasant. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another wonderful day here on the Defo Show. Jeff DeForest, we got the handsome gentleman over there. The young guy, the guy representing Gen X, is one, or even Gen Z right now, is one Mike Lubie Lubitz, and it's a pleasure to have you guys with us. Although, Lubie, I think you're going to be a little bit lost on today's show and maybe every show hereafter. Don't know how you're going to handle this because one of your favorite targets has been the local Miami Dolphins general manager, Chris Grier. You think that he has been just a brick in the front office, a detriment. Actually, it would be addition by subtraction. In your estimation, if they fired the guy, you're one of the guys leading the charge, Lubie, to call for his head. You want heads rolling down those offices. I guess they're in Miami Gardens now by the stadium somewhere in a fine new facility. Stephen Ross once again taking the Band-Aid off of the, well, it wasn't a Band-Aid on his bankroll. It is on mine. But taking a rubber band off the bankroll and doing everything in his power to try and make the Dolphins a winner. Right? And everybody was screaming, Lubie, about, oh, man, how could this guy, what kind of buffoon? This is the worst owner in all of sports. He's got a lot of money. He kind of leaves everything alone. But how could he want to run it back after this failed season of 9-8? So what does Chris Grier go out there and do, Lubie? Have you seen the headlines today just surfacing? He trades Tua Tagovailoa to the Titans for the #1 overall pick. Signs Aaron Rodgers to quarterback the team for the next 2 years. And is going to go ahead and have this Carter kid from Penn State be the #1 overall pick. So he's going to get the edge rusher. He's getting rid of Tua, who you don't think can win a championship. And he signs Rodgers as a stopgap measure until he can find a younger quarterback that may be the key and hold the keys to the franchise's success for years to come. All in one day, Lubie. How can you possibly condemn this guy now?
Can't. What a
bold moves, my friend.
Beast. What a beast in the front office, that Chris Grier. Yay. Hallelujah.
Is that even remotely believable?
No. I was like, what's today? Like, oh.
Some
I guess it's believable.
No, I mean, is it possible
Sure.
Tua for the #1 overall pick?
I mean, I don't know if teams want him now. They've trashed his name. Even though he literally is a top 8 quarterback when you look at stats the last 2 to 3 years. They rank him like 16. Like they rank him behind guys that barely start. So I don't know if he's even worth it in a lot of people's minds, even though he is. I mean, the health issues are his problem. It's not his level of play. But yes, I that would actually take a lot of ingenuity, the thing you came up with, and Chris Grier lacks that. So I would never see Grier doing whatever that is. You just came up with.
Possibility, yeah. Chris Grier, I mean, that was the key to the whole April Fool's thing. And happy April Fool's Day, everybody.
April Fool's all.
Used to be an obligation to pull off an April Fool's prank on these kind of shows. It was not an easy thing to do because you have to at least be in an area that has some semblance of believability. There has to be some part of the story that makes you think, well, I could be. Now, a couple of the ones that I've come up with that really turned out to be home runs and discouraged me from ever doing it again because the last one, you could never top what happened, what transpired as a result of an April Fool's joke where the total fantasy that I perpetrated, this hoax on people on a Saturday morning show of all things. And that was a weird one, though, Lou, because I just started at a new radio station. 790 had come into existence here in South Florida. And so Joe Rose, who, of course, has been on mornings in South Florida forever, still prospering, doing a great job. And he had decided he was going to work this Saturday show. He wanted to work on Saturdays. And then he realized he didn't have to. So all of a sudden, I was the new guy. I had signed on with the station a few months after they actually got started. And because I was a little late to the party, and I was already working Saturday mornings doing my trivia show, the trivia show that still is featured in some parts here on Thursdays with Dave Gurgles Gurgley. They would just tell me, hey, you got to stay on and do another couple of hours. So now I'm stuck doing 2 more hours on a Saturday when I'm pretty much finished with sports talk for the week. You couldn't wait for that last show. Not that I don't enjoy doing this, but you were thinking, okay, enough of this already.
Mhm.
So it's April Fool's Day, and I go ahead and put out there that Doug Flutie was going to sign with the Miami Dolphins, that I had run into him at the Hard Rock. He was wearing a disguise. We were in a poker tournament, and that he had told me just without anybody having any knowledge of this, that he was signing with the Dolphins, that he was going to make that move the next day on a Saturday. And that later today turned out that was a Saturday morning. I'm putting this news out there, and that later today that would become official. That sent people scrambling at various media outlets. I guess it was more competitive, and everything was believable, and nobody wanted to get scooped. I was really kind of playing off the whole idea that Dolphin minutia, and I'm assuming this is true in every football city. It was especially here at the time that the smallest bit of information or news about your local team sent people into a news feeding frenzy, Lubie. And so the idea that Flutie, who had already retired, was going to come back and sign. Remember, he had that drop kick when he was
He had a fun little run with the Patriots.
when he signed off there.
He was like their third stringer, and they would bring him in for little fun plays, and then he did the drop kick nonsense, and I think he beat the Dolphins.
Yeah, he was like a court jester out there at that time.
Yes.
I mean, finishing off what was a better career than you might have thought that he would have had, especially since he started out in the Canadian Football League, and you didn't think he was really going to amount to much. Too freaking small. I guess he was in the USFL at first.
Yep.
And then, when you're playing for the Saskatchewan Seals, it's not exactly a distinction on your football resume, but he did come back to the NFL, did a couple of good things, and had retired. There was no chance he was signing with the Miami Dolphins. So what happens? The Miami Herald calls up their beat reporter, Jason Cole, and says, "Oh, what do you know about this, Jason?" He said, "Well, what's the source?" They said, DeForest is saying this on 790 The Ticket. So Jason summarily dismissed it right away, realizing it was April 1st, and it was complete and utter nonsense. And then in the newsroom of the Sun Sentinel, Fort Lauderdale Sun Sentinel, South Florida Sun Sentinel, as it's now known, Harvey Fialkov gets a call from his editor and says, "You better get on top of this." And sure enough, he checks it out and then writes a story about it, speculating that there may be some element of truth to it. Never crediting me with being the source of the information, which made it especially delicious because here was a guy trying to scoop you on your own story, which you completely fabricated deliberately on an April Fool's Day. People are calling the show going, "We know what day it is, Defo." So how anybody could get sucked into believing this is beyond comprehension. But of course, because it involved Dolphin minutia or your local NFL team minutia, people were going nuts over this. And it appeared the next day in the paper. I'll never forget the call I got from the guy that helped cook up this scheme with me. And he's screaming, "We did it! We did it!" I'm like, "Did what? It's 7:30 on a Sunday morning. What are you talking about?" And I go out to the driveway, get my Sun Sentinel, which I subscribed to at the time, and there it is on like page 5 of the sports section. Flutie, possibly to sign with Dolphins. You're thinking, my God, we did it. We really did. We actually pulled off a ridiculous farce, and people bought into it. Now the other time we did it, we got a cease and desist from the general manager. Pretty much contracts were in the shredder. This was at WQAM when stuck for something on April Fool's Day. And you're asking yourself, what kind of man am I that I'm not going to at least try to perpetrate some kind of April Fool's joke on the unsuspecting sports fans here in South Florida? Now, coming from me, they know I like to mess around. And a lot of people, as evidenced by the fact that when I scooped everybody on the sale of the Marlins to John Henry by Wayne Huizinga, I called the radio station I was working at and got Boog Shambi, who was on the air, and he didn't believe it. And I'd just been introduced to John Henry. I was at some charity event after a golf tournament, and Huizinga, for some reason, comes running over to me and says, "I want you to meet the new owner of the Florida Marlins," as they were known at the time. I'm like, "What? New owner? Does anybody know about this?" It had been speculated that Wayne was dissatisfied with the way things were going. And yet, did it not seem, Lubie, like it was going to be impossible to find a buyer? So here was this meek guy that, literally looked like he was a quart low on blood. John Henry, did you ever meet him? He was actually a decent guy.
Never met him, saw him, and heard of him and interactions with him. Never dealt with him.
Yeah, he shakes my hand, and Izinga tells me he's the new owner of the Marlins, and it didn't hit me until about a minute later. I'm thinking, my God, this is like a monumental scoop. I better tell somebody about it. Somebody was on the air, so I call the radio station, and Boog Shambi was doing a show on the weekends then, as he was just kind of starting his career. And I say, hey, Boog, did you hear about this? The Marlins have been sold. And he's like, get the bleep out of here, DeForest.
You were joking.
Didn't believe me. And it was not April Fool's Day either. So tough to pull these pranks off. But yeah, we got the cease and desist at WQAM when I proposed. And how weak was this? So, an aging Marino is being traded straight up to the Dallas Cowboys for Troy Aikman. The switchboard, and literally it blew out as people were calling in. And then the Dolphins, this is where the joke kind of turns a little bit ugly when the Dolphins organization routinely, would you agree, Lubie, that for the most part, most professional sports organizations are fueled by an immense amount, an overwhelming amount of publicity paranoia? They don't want anything said about them, nothing that they didn't put out themselves.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've dealt with many teams as the flagship station. I was almost always associated with stations that were the flagship for, if not one, but many of the local franchises. At one time, I guess QAM had them all, right? That was the idea of the general manager there, Greg Reed. Let's dominate the market, get them all. And it wasn't a bad idea either, because if you wanted sports fans to tune in your station, let's face it, the games at that time on the radio were still driving people to the station. But the idea that Marino would be traded for Aikman, a complete absurdity. Nobody in their right mind would have traded for Dan Marino at that stage of his career by offering up Troy Aikman, who may have been a little bit past his prime, but he wasn't as far past it as, I hate to say it because we love the guy, but let's face it, Danny Boy, they were debating whether to put Damon Heward in the starting lineup instead.
Exactly.
Jimmy Johnson was telling you that Damon Heward was a better option if the Dolphins were going to have a chance to win, which essentially was Jimmy saying, we have no chance to win.
Yeah.
We're not even interested in winning. I don't know that he was interested in tanking.
No.
The switchboard was flooded, and then it got ugly when the Dolphin switchboard started getting cancellations of their season tickets.
Oh, God.
When it starts costing you money, the joke is no longer funny, Lubie. But after that, I never thought that would work. And then, of course, we had the Flutie thing. And then I retired the whole principle of April Fool's jokes. Do you think many people will try to perpetrate some kind of a hoax on their adoring public and fans today in connection with April Fool's Day? And did you even realize it was April 1st, Lubie? This one really snuck in there. I don't know if it's a byproduct of the aging process, but the idea that it's already April 1st, that this year, 2025, is one quarter over and one day now into the second quarter of this the calendar year seems impossible to compute. But, yeah, I mean, if Chris Greer did that, it would be beyond remarkable. Trading Tua Tagovailoa for the number one overall pick. Would you even consider that, Lubie? Is a viable thing to do? Number one overall pick. I'm not saying that you're going to grab Cam Ward, but, of course,
I like Carter.
Man of Aaron Rodgers to the Dolphins.
The Rodgers part is what's weird to me. Look, at this point with Tua, I don't debate his abilities. I debate his health, which I think is equally an issue. I mean, again, whether he can play or be have the ability to play, it's the same thing. Like, he's going to miss a quarter of the season every year. I don't think he's your franchise quarterback going forward just because of that. So yes, if you can get rid of him and get a legit franchise player, I would actually be open to it. The problem is you do need a quarterback in that equation, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers is it. I don't know what is left, but I just and I think at this point, it's not only that he's the older guy that may not contribute, he's actually a death knell. Like, he gets in your way. Like, he still thinks it's not like he's willing to cede the power, this and that. He still wants to be involved in everything, get his old teammates on the team who can't play anymore. Like, so he can't play and he gets in the way and he's a cancer. Like, is
that not a typical Dolphin move though?
Yes, no, that's why I was like, because I almost believed you. I was like, yeah, that sounds like he swings for the fences.
I had you for a second. I saw that.
Well, because that's the kind of thing that, even though he's not creative, so that's why I'm like, there's like one extra move in there that Greer wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So it's not Greer. So I'm like, oh, it must be April 1st. But I'm like, this is the kind of move, a team that's like, all right, you know what? Where are we right now? Like, we're not winning. Okay, let's pivot. Like that's what I would have. I mean, I would have gotten rid of Greer and McDaniels and had the next guy do that move because that's what'll happen, right? Like Tua's going to get one more year, McDaniels going to get one more year when they fail because they will. Then they're going to reset the whole thing because you'll be 2 years into the contract, so it won't be as punitive to get rid of Tua, and another regime's going to want their quarterback. So
we have our routine for next April 1st.
yeah, just be ready because it feels like something like this will happen next. Yeah, like
Rodgers will be OOP, as they say in dog
Rodgers,
racing.
it won't be Rodgers.
Yeah, he'll be finished. But nonetheless, wow, I mean, you're getting enough vagaries on that front. This reminds me of when they were chasing Brett Favre around at the end of his career. And,
Yep.
you had Rachel Nichols hiding under the truck. Right under the engine part where, I mean, she comes out and there's like oil splattered all over her face. And there was another guy that was also in competition with her for all of these.
Pedro Gomez, God rest his soul, Pedro Gomez used to do it all the time too, but he was mostly Barry Bonds.
Gomez wasn't chasing Favre, but he was chasing Barry Bonds. Years, yeah. Who was the guy? He's still around. Ed
Werder? Oh, Ed Werder. Okay, yeah. He was just over
and Rachel. They were underneath Favre's truck, and if he went to go get some eggs from the local store there, they immediately had to scramble to get out from underneath it as he started the engine. And the next thing you know, they're inhaling all these gas fumes. But they were obsessed with that story, and the Rodgers story is not quite pursued with the same obsession, but nonetheless, I mean, a lot of vagaries there. Mike Tomlin talking about how they had a nice meeting. Well, what the hell is that, Lubie?
I don't know. I mean, they don't have a quarterback, so for them, it makes sense to sign them. They have an interesting team. They have an interesting foundation. They have a real coach that people believe in and trust, and that real coach has hit a plateau the last few years that he may need to shake things up. So the Steelers, I could see it working. I just couldn't see it working here. I mean, Mike McDaniel with Rodgers, that would be such a stupid disaster. I mean,
it would kind of be like a Shaq.
With the SVG, exactly.
With Stan Van Gundy.
Yep.
Ray comes over and essentially is looking at Riley with that look on his face, like if this guy isn't out of here, then I certainly am not going to play very hard for the next 60 games. All right, a lot to get to here on the show. Mike Lubitz, and then later on this morning, a special edition of Bleacher Brothers Conversations, as Lon Kruger will join us, fabled coach Lon Kruger, and help us analyze the matchups in the Final Four, and we'll talk about his career. Interesting career spanning many, many years, and of course, his son Kevin followed in his footsteps to some degree. We're both coached at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Kevin Kruger just got canned from that job, and right now is traveling without a place. But Lon Kruger, recently in coaching, had a long tenure at Oklahoma, of course, was with the Florida Gators, took the Gators to a Final Four. That was 1990. Was that all the way back? 1994? Yeah, 1994 Gators.
Okay, I thought it was 92. Okay, 94. All right.
94. And then went back again in 2016, a Final Four that we had the pleasure of covering, Lubie, where we were mistaken. That was great, where we were mistaken as if we were Syracuse coaches standing there on the sidelines there, and we're thinking we're going to get kicked off, and instead they assumed that we were assistant coaches standing. I couldn't believe they let you just walk out on the court there with a flimsy looking media pass. I mean, we had the media pass that had you sitting in seats where you couldn't even see the game in this 100% stadium that was in Houston. So we had the pleasure of watching that, but unfortunately for Lon Kruger, that turned out to be one of the biggest bloodbaths, I think. Is that the largest margin of victory in a Final Four game?
I don't know, because it was just bad. I remember it being like from the beginning, they never got their footing, and Hield was horrendous. It was like the worst game he had that whole year.
It was ugly. Buddy Hield couldn't hit anything. It has to be a little weird for any basketball player. I don't know how you feel about this, but perspective in those buildings,
yeah, it sucks.
It has to be especially strange, no?
Yeah, it's like it goes on forever. Like it's usually there's not fans right there. Like where the hoop is, there's like a vast. It's like cavernous. It's like weird. It definitely is a different way of shooting than normal. I mean, you see these guys a lot of time. It takes them a few minutes to get their footing, and he just never. In that game, he never got his footing.
It was a trouncing right from the opening buzzer, and they never got out of their own way. And I still do remember. I mean, it was great. because we kind of went to the press conference just to have something to do between games. What we're going to do is sit in the seats there, where you're literally as far of an outpost as you could be in the stadium. And so we go back there thinking there might be some free media grub. And I thought Lon Kruger really distinguished himself because he handled that as well as you possibly could. As Jim Sarney suggests, we should have said that the Marlins are moving to Montreal. That would be
That's believable. That's a
a
problem.
move that would be applauded, I think.
That's a problem. People
Although they are 3-2 on the season. I don't know. There are a million things you could come up with for April Fool's Day, but that started out with some promise, didn't it? Tua for the number 1 pick.
I believe
Tennessee Titans need a quarterback. They settle on Tua. We get rid of a problem that I think is going to persist into the. I mean, we'll always be having the same debate. You ever you think about, well, where is this analysis going, Lubie? Where is this storyline going? And a lot of times in sports, it's going in the very same direction it's been spinning in for quite some time, which is, the guy's okay. At times, shows you flashes, and you're thinking this guy could be really good. But for the most part, most athletes, most teams revert back to being themselves. And you're not getting the series of miracles that you need to make something happen that is of a more spectacular nature. I believe this 9-8 type of Tua, 8-9, 9-8, is pretty much what you're going to get for the rest of the way. No?
And by the way, just going back to that Final Four, just to again prove you right, actually. Villanova was the opponent. They won 95-51. It
Oh my God.
was, and I think it still is, the largest victory in Final Four play ever. Buddy Hield, who was the player of the year, and he averaged in the 20s, had 9 points in that game. And I think a lot of it came later. Like, I think the game was over when he did any of the stuff he did.
I was blanking on Roy Williams for some reason, but he was the guy that thought we were Syracuse assistants. Remember when he wished us good luck for the game?
We were walking on, because that's the thing is, I've been a media guy and been on the court before a game, but once they start doing shoot around, they get rid of everyone unless they're doing like an interview. Like if you're ESPN and they have a setup, or like you're the local, you have a setup, but like they don't let you just walk around. Like we weren't affiliated with anyone that was doing anything active, and they were having live shoot around. It was like 20 minutes before the game, they were having live shoot around, and we were just walking around. There was no one else with media passes, and both coaches, I think Boeheim and Roy Williams, like, all right, coach, good luck. We're like, if we're not on your staff, whose staff are we on?
Jimmy thought we were on his staff. Could you imagine?
Yeah, they both.
No idea. I mean, he was probably becoming somewhat incoherent as dementia was setting in there. All right, many things to get to. As I said, I watched a little of the women's UConn game last night, UConn USC. It lost a lot of its luster when Juju Watkins was taken out for the season there with a torn ACL. I happened to see that play. It was not a pretty thing. I became a Juju Watkins fan. I have an affinity for USC, with apologies to certain friends of mine that are diehard UCLA fans, but I always liked USC. I enjoyed covering the Trojans. We didn't really pay too much attention to their basketball. UCLA was a dominant team at that time still, under the Wizard when I was out in California. And then and they weren't bad under Gene Bartow, but they certainly weren't the same. And the dynasty began to sort of dissipate and be dismantled, and it hasn't really come back since. But USC, of course, as a football entity, was spectacular. They had the best players you could imagine coming, one after another, rolling their way into the first round of the National Football League. Hard to imagine. We've discussed this many times over the many years. Hard to imagine that they could lose that level of prestige with the recruiting base that they have in Southern California. And then naturally, they have national appeal. But the basketball program was not quite at that level or anywhere close to it. I guess, what was Harold Miner? Their most prominent. Who else
Mayo.
at USC?
OJ Mayo went third overall, and we know how that went.
Yeah. But they never really, I mean, it's kind of like USC quarterbacks, where only Carson Palmer really distinguished himself as being an excellent, top-notch NFL quarterback. And they had great quarterbacks that had tremendous success running the teams there for many, many years.
Yep.
On the women's side, though, this Juju Watkins made them much more compelling as a basketball entity. And that would have been a spectacular showdown, I believe, last night if Juju Watkins had been on the floor. I don't know that she would have been enough to combat what's going on. And the question of the day would be, if you were following women's basketball, Mike Lubie Lubitz, is I say Gino Auriemma, and you say what? What's the first thing? The first thing that pops into your head is a word that rhymes with Rick, is it not?
I was gonna say jerk off, Rick. Either one. Yeah.
Be careful with the new language guidelines here on Bleach Brothers.
Honestly,
We're trying to keep the show clean, but
jerk off.
yeah, I guess that is a mild and very tempered way to describe the fact that you think this guy is pretty much a pompous ass. No,
Yes.
but
Yes.
that being said, how can you deny the man's record? It's unbelievable.
Oh,
It is
no.
Wooden-esque. 24 seasons he's been to the Final Four. 24 of 40 seasons at the University of Connecticut. As we were talking about with our massive knowledge and deep-rooted knowledge of women's college basketball, as we were talking about yesterday on the show, what was it? It was Tennessee and Old Dominion. Did anybody else have a women's team of any significance going back, say, 40 years ago when Pat Summitt was an embryo? Don't think so. UConn comes on the scene 40 years ago with Gino Auriemma, and they stamped themselves as the definitive dynasty that we've seen in women's basketball. 11 championships, 24 Final Fours in 40 years under Gino Auriemma, and was my predicted outcome. It was my predicted outcome that they would be the champions again. And that certainly looked to be in play last night against a depleted and to what level, I don't know, deflated USC team. But you had to think that when they got to this level of opposition after all the mismatches, that things were going to balance out. And the absence of Juju Watkins was going to be too much of a price to pay for USC. This Paige Beckers isn't talked about in the same kind of parameters as other women's stars have been, certainly not getting the attention that Caitlin Clark got last year. We've seen others also. Juju Watkins is often first name that pops into mind. You're saying, hey, name me a women's college basketball player on the scene today. You're going to say what? Probably Juju Watkins, no?
That's all I would say. Yep.
But Paige Beckers doesn't take a backseat to anybody. This girl can play, Lubie.
No, she's legit. Yeah.
She's hitting shots from the Coke machine last night. It was just absolutely wild, this one stretch. They have another young lady on the team named Strong, who also doesn't look like she's going to be a three-point chucker, but can chuck it up from three-point land. And they run away and hide in their ball game yesterday, and now have made their way into the Final Four, where they're going to take on UCLA for the semifinal round of the women's basketball championship. Looking for number 12 for Gino. South Carolina and Texas also in the Final Four. Still a little rough watching some of those bricks, those lob passes into the post that go straight out of bounds, the missed layups, the bonked shots from 5 feet away. But there was a stretch in that game watching UConn where they looked like the freaking Boston Celtics, as if they just brought Hondo Havlicek off the bench to score 5 quick points. And, well, they didn't have the three when Hondo was there. Imagine if they did. How great would NBA basketball have been if they had the three-point shot back in the day? That would have really been something. But watch out. My prediction may come true, Lubie. So they'll probably lose, right, to UCLA, which was holy Dick Enberg. What am I talking about here? And the Bruins, I've done it again. But UConn looked great last night in their win. And I started looking at Gino and thinking he might have mellowed some. Is that possible, Lubie?
Oh, probably. I mean, he's got to be in his 60s by now.
Did he? Well, sure. He's been there 40 years.
Yeah. Jesus
he might be 70. Gino Auriemma looks pretty good. I mean, he always had the hair. It's thinning out a little bit, but he really looks good on the bench there because in spite of the fact that when it's 90-10 and Phil Mushnick would be all over the idea that, hey, how come
you're right. He's 71. He's 71 years old. Jesus.
I know my septuagenarian, so Lubie.
It's crazy. He's been
being one myself. It's ugly. A lot of Major League Baseball activity, Lubie. We haven't really touched on the season. It got underway kind of quietly, and then the team that we had condemned as being among the most inept ever assembled and likely to not even win 60 games this year got out of the chute at 3-1 against the Pittsburgh Pirates, who were 3 walk-off wins. That was not the case last night as they got slammed by the New York Mets in a Monday night affair. Mets in town. They don't even give attendance figures anymore. Is that by team design? Where
100%.
They've put the squash on putting or announcing attendance figures. I'm watching some of this game last night. The Mets broke it open in one of the middle innings with a bunch of home runs. Alonso had a 3-run shot, and the Marlins were hopelessly out of it. The kind of game that you were anticipating would be typical of virtually all of their 162 games. So,
yes.
Briefly flirted with first place.
Yeah.
in the National League East. That was good. Dodgers undefeated. The torpedo bat is all the rage. I tried to get in touch and I hope to get him on the show. It actually turns out that somebody connected with the Marlins organization designed the torpedo.
Yes, he's actually a coach. There's one of their coaches is the guy that when he worked with the Yankees designed it. And now he works for the Marlins. So they're supposed to be having one coming soon.
Well, they need one.
Oh, no. If anyone needs
Should
one.
they not handicap these games when you look at a franchise as pathetic as the Marlins, any of the bottom dwellers in Major League Baseball? And the White Sox actually have won a couple of games this year, but they were so awful last year that you couldn't imagine that they would have much success this season. I didn't see any overwhelming transformational transactions that they were involved in, except more guys. Yeah, they had a guy, I guess he was pitching for the White Sox, and his name is like, it starts with an S, Sokomore or something like that. I don't know. He was 0-10 last year with the White Sox. He gets a $9 million contract to sign elsewhere. Imagine that if a guy was 0-10. And you're giving him $9 million because you're getting him on a bargain because his record was so pathetic.
Yeah, because he sucked.
What is that?
I don't know.
Wow, Louie. I mean, we should be around today. But the torpedo bat, Ellie De La Cruz breaks one out last night. The Cincinnati Reds shortstop, very exciting player, one of the most enjoyable players to watch.
Yeah.
And what does he do? He hits 2 home runs in the ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, the bat works. I love Jazz Chisholm. Oh, the bat doesn't do anything. These people are idiots. First of all, again, you don't do things for no reason. So obviously it does something. Second, yes, the Yankees lineup's good. It's not murderer's row. Like the fact that they had like 15 homers in 3 games. They weren't doing, even when they had Stanton hitting well, and that's a ridiculous number. Like,
yeah. I'm trying to get a hold of Charlie Lau, the son of the great Charlie Lau, but a guy who followed in his father's footsteps and was known as kind of a hitting guru. So we'll see if we can't pop him on or get some people about this torpedo bat, because it's something that it has to come to some sort of head.
It's ridiculous. I don't understand how it's legal. I mean, I get it; it's the same material, but I don't.
You change the shape of the barrel of the bat so it looks like an oar.
Yeah, I just don't get. I don't get how it's legal. It's the same weight. It's the same material. Fine.
How will they find a way to make it illegal?
Yeah,
the only thing you could do is go to geometry on this and say, well, the barrel of the bat, the shape has to be cylindrical of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought there were wedge rules. That's why they've had the same bat for 120 years. Like, there's a reason. It's
like a wiffle ball bat. It's great.
Yeah, if they could have done this, why didn't they do it earlier then? Like, that's what's weird to me. Why now suddenly they feel, oh, we can screw with the bat? Okay.
The Louisville Slugger people are very happy.
Exactly.
Kind of reshape the way the game is played. But De La Cruz, the second home run that he hit last night, Lubie, this was a tape measure job. It was one of those ones that gets its own baseball card back in the day where they showed the trajectory of the ball. Here's how to make it one out of Tiger Stadium.
Yep.
And they had the perforated line showing you the flight of the ball, almost like they were doing the glowing puck thing back in the days when Fox experimented with that. It was great. The puck would be flying. It would literally hit some nun in the face, according to the laser that was following it. And then you're looking and going, wait a minute, man. It's right there, sitting at center right. We're going to come back with a lot more. There's NBA stuff happening. We have, of course, the Final Four. We can get into a little analysis of that. We'll have a more in-depth look at that. 10 o'clock today, special edition of Conversations. Lon Kruger going to join us here on the program. Seems very sharp, 72 years old, Lon Kruger.
Oh, wow.
Long career. He was with a lot of teams for a long period of time.
He coached UNLV for a while, and he did a really good job there.
UNLV, Illinois, Oklahoma, Florida Gators.
Yeah, he was really good at Illinois, too.
And he had the usual sort of early nomadic plight of almost every coach that you talk to that got to a high level of basketball on the collegiate level.
He went to the pros, right? Didn't he coach from the Gators?
Coached the Hawks for 1 year.
And
that probably was a failed experiment. Did we get into that with Lon Kruger? Hey, what was that year like with the Hawks? It was enough to get him back into college basketball, where he's well respected. So 2 Final Four appearances. He'll join us at 10 o'clock here on Bleacher Brothers. That's Mike Lubie. I'm Jeff DeForest. We're coming back with more on the Defo Show in a moment. Now that. The time. I had you for a second, Lubie. Tua for the number 1 overall pick.
That's too smart.
I knew I was going to mess it up when I went to Rogers, that would be the dead giveaway. Miami was going to sign Aaron Rodgers for a couple of years. It's 8:37. Play the ponies in style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar, and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
Are you looking to buy your first home? Have you been turned down for a loan? Do you need to refinance or get money out of your home? Call Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. He's been helping the South Florida community get mortgages for 30 years.
Hi, this is Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. We have the most competitive fixed rates in the market. Call me 24/7, 561-441-2730. And remember, I don't just work banking hours. To make the right choice for your home, call Choice Mortgage today.
This comes from the great Defo Lama. It's the bets you don't make, the chances you don't take, that can compromise an otherwise incredible life, my friend.
The only way to get your morning started is with Defo, joined by Lubie, right here on the Defo Show.
All right, welcome back to the show. Jeff DeForest. We got Mike Lubitz, 10 o'clock today, Bleacher Brothers. Lon Kruger helping us analyze the Final Four and who will be the eventual champion in college basketball. You look at the two matchups, Lubie, Houston and Duke. Wow, that's a contrast in styles, is it not?
Yep.
Duke with dominant size, and they like to go ahead and chuck the rock. I was watching an analyst today, and I wanted to steal this material. I thought it was kind of interesting. It may not be accurate, but certainly was interesting in the presentation. Old school versus new school. John Shire representing the new school of coaches, and Kelvin Sampson representing the old school. Sampson coaching, 30 some odd years. Shire's been involved for 3. Follows in the footsteps of a legend. Not an easy thing to do at a program where the expectations are going to be, just exponentially higher than any first-year coach should be facing, especially first-time head coach. But the comparison was that while Sampson was dissatisfied with something that his team was doing in practice, he immediately had them doing, can we even use this word in conjunction with the drill? That's the only way I knew it was a suicide drill. It wasn't a survival drill. I don't think.
No, the drill's called suicides.
It's a suicide.
Man, because that's how you feel. It's like ridiculous. Suicides are the worst.
Doesn't it look simple? It's kind of like the burpee. My just feared whenever we were having to do burpees in gym class, which was also known as the squat thrust. Those were awful, Lubie. If you could motivate yourself to do 20 squat thrusts every morning, you could probably perpetuate your ability to stay in shape and be at least a little bit mobile and not stiff as a board like most of us old geezers are all the time. But who could motivate themselves to do that? You really needed a Marquis de Sade type of gym coach that was administering the type of punishment that could only be rivaled by forcing you to play soccer when they said, okay, burpees, 50 of them. And that was a deal where you would go into a squat position from standing, push your legs out into a push-up position, bring them back to the squat position, and then jump up and do a jumping jack.
And you keep doing it over and over again.
Try doing 3 of those, right? Not one of those. I don't think I'll be able to peel myself off the floor just from getting down. If I could get into a squat without having my knees feel like Jim Otto.
Yeah.
So that was tough, but far and away. And here's Sampson. He's dissatisfied with something in practice. Lubie, we're talking Allen Iverson City here. Practice. and he has them run 50 suicides.
Okay.
That's from the baseline to the foul line and back. It seems like it wouldn't be that tough, doesn't it? Baseline to the foul line and back, that's nothing, right? You're running a couple of feet, like you're in the shuttle run there. The president's test
The
of
whole
physics.
thing's one. When you do, they're doing it to the foul line, to the half court, to the other foul line, to the end line, and back, and that's
And then all the
one.
way back. Yeah,
But they're
That's-
calling it one. That's the thing. Like to do that 50 times. I don't know
I'm
if I've ever done
schwitzing
that.
just thinking about it. I mean, it was disgusting. And at the end of practice, okay, let's run some suicides. You know what?
Yeah, exactly. This
I'd
thing
rather run into the wall there and just be squashed like a grape.
Duke may win by 40. I was on Houston, but Duke may win by 30.
So Sampson, tough, drill instructor type of coach, has his team running 50 suicides or whatever it was after being dissatisfied with the way their effort was appearing in practice.
I mean,
And Shire goes out and gets like a mental coach and has these teams, his whole team sitting there in like a seance type of thing, chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Yeah.
And trying to evoke images of Ike and Tina Turner. And you're thinking, that's a totally different approach. Now, is that the way that it works? Everybody has different. And Jimmy Johnson talked about this on our show when we were down there at Jimmy Johnson's big show. And I think, look, he was a perfect advocate of this. So where you're going to treat different players in a different fashion.
Yes.
Is that the way to go, though? The whole gentle approach? Look, Duke is playing great basketball right now. You would say, I mean, they're favored by 4.5 over Houston. I think it's a reasonable number, is it not, Lubie? They should be favored over Houston from what we've seen.
I mean, Duke's blowing everyone out. No one's even touched them. And they've find their early rounds weren't amazing opponents, but Alabama was a championship contender. And they blew them out. They blew the doors off, like from the beginning. Like Houston suffocated Tennessee, but they just beat the crap out of them on both ends of the floor. I mean, their defense was suffocating and their offense was fantastic. I mean, and it's not just Flag, and Flag was wonderful. He's been wonderful in every game. They just have a nice cast of characters, and Shire's doing a really good job. I look, there's the old school way it works, but there's something to be said for Sampson's never gotten farther than this. Like, he's gotten to around the Final Four, and then he hits his ceiling. So, again, we've seen very much like Tom Thibodeau, like coaches that beat the crap out of their players. It works sort of this day and age. These players respond to a coach that respects them as much as a coach that beats the crap out of. That makes me lean more Duke by the second. Like,
they're Happy Gilmore compared to.
I mean, I get it to be tough, blah, 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 blah. That's true. It is. But these are also kids that have not come up that way. So to like throw the, and again, if they've been with Oklahoma, it's not new to them. So that's fine. And they got her, Houston. If they've been with Houston, because he used to coach Oklahoma and then he got into troubles because that's Sampson. He's done this all year. I'm sure he's done this their whole career there. I'm sure. And he's a good coach, but he hits a ceiling, like, and it feels like things like this are sort of why, like, at some point you have to do something different to get to another level, and I don't think he does. Like, I think he caps out, and I think Shire, you said, is a younger dude who's willing to try different things, do different things, and we've seen that sort of work in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, he's the Maharishi compared to. You shall feel peace, flower child, by making 3-point shot at buzzer. All right, so radically different approaches there. I'm leaning and I'm thinking UConn has better overall talent.
Oh, Duke.
Yeah, Duke, not UConn. I'm talking about the women.
UConn and the women's. I don't think anyone's
Duke. Duke and Houston. I believe Duke probably wins that game. I hate to say it because it ruins my chance of winning my little pool that I was in, which kind of went up in smoke when Michigan State went down because. For God's sake, predict at least something other than 4 number 1 teams in the Final Four, people. I mean, you can look at yourself in a mirror after you do something like this. And even though you feel you're beating your chest, I got all 4 teams in the Final Four. Look in the mirror and just say to yourself, I'm a loser. A chalk-eating, milk of magnesia gargling loser. And not that you need to feel bad because you do have the last laugh. All the other people,
you're
and I
right.
always say this: the people at the track that are screaming at the poor guy to bet the 3 to 5 shot, and he needed him as part of a sequence, maybe for hitting a giant payoff on a pick 5 or some elaborate exotic bet. So only one horse can win. So if you don't have the winner, you're tearing up your tickets.
Yeah.
In this case, with Duke, I believe I'm going to be tearing up my ticket. I think they're going to beat Houston.
I only did one bracket and it was up in smoke early because I had Carolina and Clemson going to the 16s and then I had St. John's going to the 4s and Michigan. So my bracket was stupid. But the one thing I've been right so far is I had Houston going all the way to the 4s, and then I had Houston beating Duke. Because remember, we did this. Duke had the flag injury, and you didn't know. So I thought they'd be good enough to get here, but I thought Houston would be enough to get past them. And then I still believe this. I think both of them are better than both Auburn and Florida. So I had Houston winning it all. But as the tournament's happened, you have to be honest. And Duke has just been impressive from the opening tip to now in every facet. And Flag is not hurt. He is fantastic. And they've rallied around him. And he's not like supposedly, and I didn't watch all of the game because they were up by so much. It was hard to just watch it intently. I'm not, unless you're a Duke fan. But like, as good as his scoring was, his passing is what was even more impressive. So if you have a guy like that, exactly, in defense, that's unselfish in that way.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And I'm glad you said that because he really has sort of submitted himself to the idea of being part of a team. I mean, this is a guy who probably could score twice as many points and be a much bigger factor, but he's selfless enough to go ahead and capitulate to what's good for everybody. And they have plenty of ammunition to go with them. I mean, you have 3 blue blood freshmen, highly recruited freshmen that all came in there, including Flag. You have this Tyrese Proctor, who's got Blutarski numbers in terms of years in school. I think he was, 4 years somewhere else at Tulane or something? And then came in and ended up. Oh no, he's been there at Duke, and he developed, and he's been around for a while.
Yep.
But he's really blossomed this year.
Yep.
And then they have one transfer. So I mean, well comprised. Seem to have the elements. And not dissing Houston because I know less about them.
No, they're
I
legit.
was very impressed with the smothering defense against Tennessee. That was one of those things that you look at. And as a former chucker myself, the last thing you wanted was some guy that was going to put Velcro-like relentless pressure on you everywhere that you went on the floor.
You're like, dude, get off.
Don't follow me out here. Can I just stand in a corner and maybe get off a shot, huh?
No, I mean, look, I think it's going to be I'm hoping we finally have a good weekend of games. I think both these teams are evenly matched. Auburn and Florida know each other well. Auburn's playing better than they played in the. It's funny. They were a number 1 seed all year, and they became the overall number 1 seed. But the way they finished this season was struggling. They played consistent throughout this tournament. Florida's one that's had its struggles.
Yeah.
But those 2 teams know each other really well. And Duke and Houston are 2 teams that sort of, I don't know if they're polar opposites, because they both play really good defense, but they're not done the same way as you've been talking. I think Houston's going to push Duke. I don't think it's going to be like a blowout or anything like that. I don't know if they have the firepower in the end to get it done. And Duke obviously does.
Really, I mean, it shows you how brilliant the themes were in illustrating what often happens in sports in the early Rocky movies before they got to Tommy the Duke Morrison. And the whole thing started to unravel and fall apart. And it became more and more ridiculous. One Rocky movie after another. Well, when they had the thing with Lundgren, I mean, where he was the Russian guy, that was absurd when he knocked Apollo Creed into the next lifetime in an exhibition. Come on. You can believe it now with what's being said and going on with Russia. But outside of that, first couple, though, I mean, is this not the Houston thing with the old school Kelvin Sampson thinking? Is it not Clubber Lang in some dungeon-like setting, working out and hitting the heavy bag there that's hanging from a rusty chain under the guidance of some hardcore boxing guy while Rocky's off there on the chicken circuit accepting awards and having his star placed on Hollywood Boulevard, and then they get in a ring together the first time, and it's just an absolute blowout. So Houston would represent that whole theme. They're the Clubber Lang of this game.
Yeah.
I don't know that Duke is Rocky Balboa because I'm not sure that they're sort of resting on their laurels there, and it certainly was no fluke that they got there in the first place.
Nah, they're the
Right.
both
So,
sides.
I mean, the beating that Rocky took in that first fight, for that, you can only think of Tyson Fury peeling himself off the mat there in that first Wilder fight,
Oh,
where
yeah.
you were actually seeing stars from the punch, and then
Yep.
the guy gets up and he wins the rest of the round. So, yeah, good stuff. And the Florida Gators are going to be certainly in the state of Florida, Luby. An interesting story. Although, has the state embraced this Gator basketball team, or are we just out of touch because we live in actually what is the 51st state, and that is South Florida,
Yeah.
which has nothing to do with the rest of the state of Florida?
Yeah, I mean, down here, look, again, we were like the home of the Final Four 2 years ago, and it was still hard to find. Like, we had UM and FAU in the Final
Yes.
Four, and
Nobody
we
cared.
barely talked about it. Like, it was more talked about than normal, but it still wasn't like the Panthers being the Stanley Cup got way more attention than UM and FAU being in the Final Four.
Among the most remarkable circumstances that have ever taken place in sports.
And both had a chance to win, right? Like, you had a VCU get to the Final Four, but you sort of knew it was the end. George Mason got to the Final Four, you knew it was the end. The way both teams played, and the professor talked about it last week, as you look at that FAU team, their players are littered throughout. They were littered throughout the Sweet 16. Like,
yes, and their coach.
So, yeah, and their coach. So it was like that team was for real. And you really thought, look, they were the better team for San Diego State for most of that game. And then Miami, again, UConn was just a buzzsaw, but Miami wasn't getting blown out in that game. Like, both those teams had a legit chance to find themselves in the championship game when both programs have been ill-forgotten for the majority of their entireties of their tenure. So, like, it's one of the greatest stories ever. And down here, no one, I mean, people barely care. They just did. Like, so Florida being there, Florida has a track record of winning. I haven't heard anyone talking. And even if you can't stand them, like, they're in the Final Four. It should be a big deal.
I keep blowing by this guy on my walk of life that's wearing a Gator shirt. He's wearing the same Gator shirt every day. Older guy, moving, has a little bounce in his step. I would have to give it to him. And I don't think he's even aware that the Gators are in the Final Four. Because I kind of give him like a thumbs up, or I imitate a shot or something, and he has no reaction. He just
doesn't react.
You give him one of these, he's got the Gator shirt on. For God's sake, you're in the tournament. Wake up. Gators, interesting proposition, and fairly, you would have to say, on paper, is that not a very difficult game to pick? Auburn looked great in their last ball game, eliminating Michigan State. They throttled them from the start. Is it Jonai? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, it looks like a weird way to spell Johnny, but they kept calling him Janai. Janai. They kept saying Janai Boone. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting way to get to that.
The guy was Walton-esque in this game before he got hurt. And then he comes out and hits a three. He's grabbing rebounds with one arm like he was the guy that got Richard Kimball in a jackpot. He did. He's grabbing rebounds like the one-arm man in The Fugitive. And still playing effectively. But at one point, wasn't he something like 17 out of 19? I mean, he had some ridiculous percentage.
That was a great game.
And and a great story. There was another allusion, material I would like to steal from this particular analyst whose name I'm not familiar with. It was a guy that played for UCLA, Sean something with an L, on ESPN. Okay. Seems to have a pretty good feel for this sort of thing. I mean, he's not just yelling and screaming, and I think they're going to win. And he said that the Cinderella stories were more about individual players, especially in that game between Auburn and the Florida Gators, where Janai Broome was lightly regarded coming out of high school and blossomed into this type of player. And the same thing about Clayton, that he was like on Iona, I think, played for Rick Pitino, and ended up on the Gators. Interesting to follow the progress. And I hate this word. How many times are we going to hear it in the Final Four, in interviews, halftime, after the game? The word journey. When people like to run a bachelorette and they describe how would you describe your journey? It's like, what are you talking about, man? It was just here for the money. I mean, it would be nice to hear somebody say that to that question. But Yeah, interesting. Those might be two Cinderella stories to watch among players, even though we didn't really get that having any kind of a long shot team prosper in a tournament. But that's all coming up. 10 o'clock today, we'll talk with Lon Kruger about that here on Bleacher Report. So looking very much forward to that and getting his insight on what's happening in the tournament. And hopefully we have helped confuse you even further as to what the outcome is going to be. Because if I'm convinced that Duke is going to beat Houston,
Yeah.
and I need Houston to win. I see that's the problem that you people have that think that, hey, let me just go against DeForest's prediction here because he's routinely wrong about all of this stuff, as many of us are. But I mean, Houston would really have to come up with something humongous, wouldn't they?
It feels like it.
No sexual double entendre intended. They would have to have the torpedo bat
Yeah.
blocking shots around the basket, I
That's
think,
it.
to get by this Duke team, which very, very impressive what they've done so far. They beat Alabama by 20.
No, it's never close. Like from the beginning of that game, like and Mark and Sears have been playing as well as anyone in the tournament.
Yeah.
And they just extinguished them. They just put them out, and they put them out early, and they never made a push. Again, like we always talk about, and it's both college and the NBA. Everyone makes a run, especially with the 3-ball now. Everyone and have a bunch of in both levels of basketball. Everyone makes a run. There was no run. Like Duke just, and Houston's game was very similar. That's why I think they'll hang around, obviously, because they were able to just. And Tennessee's good. Tennessee's been good all year. They had their ups and downs, but they've been good all year. Houston just laid the wood to them. Duke did the same thing. And it wasn't just a smothering defense. It was from every phase. And it's like, if you're a guy who's going to be the number one pick, who's this generational talent, it reminds me of Anthony Davis, who people didn't realize how well he could score because he didn't have to.
Yes.
That team was so freaking loaded that he just like, all right, well, I'm just going to play great defense. I'm going to rebound. And if they need me to score, I'll score. But he averaged like 9 or 10 points, but he averaged like almost a triple double, and people didn't realize what that meant. Like to me, when you have a guy that's that talented, who's willing, it's not even taking a back seat because he's being a facilitator, who is willing to facilitate, block shots, rebound, let other guys hit shots. That's freaking scary because then it's like, okay, it's like the Jokic. Why Jokic is better most of the time when he's passing. Like you almost want Jokic to score, like because when he gets everyone involved, who do you stop? And that's sort of what Flag has become these last few games. Maybe he was all year, but it's really been under a microscope. And it's like, I don't know how you beat them then, because if he's willing.
Let's hope they lose.
I'd
rather be wrong.
Yeah, I get it.
At this point. Did you ever get a chance to see that Jokic no-look over-the-shoulder pass?
No, I have to look it up.
To a streaking, I believe it might have been Aaron Gordon for, a blind pass like Magic Johnson could only dream of making. Jokic just does this as a matter of routine. By the way, Thunder on fire in the NBA 10-game winning streak. Boston has a 9-game streak going, and your Miami Heat 5-game winning streak after looking like they were ready to pack it in.
They catch a 7, honestly, which I don't know, good or bad, whatever it means, but.
I believe the streak will come to an end. Wednesday, they play the Boston Celtics, I think, on the road. So that doesn't bode well for them. A vote today coming on the tush push from the Rules Committee.
I know.
What do you see there?
Look, I agree with the Philly people in the sense that, and we talk about this with baseball, like with the shifts and stuff, like just learn how to hit to all fields. Like just learn how to stop it. My problem is, and Andy and I talked about this, I swear it was illegal my whole life. So that's my thing is, even when they're like, well, no one gets hurt. But when was it allowed to just shove people? Like you can't do it in the middle of the field. If in the middle of the field you just started shoving a dude, it'd be illegal, right? Okay. Why is it different behind the line of screen? Like, I'm not saying you can't do QB sneaks. I'm not saying everyone on the line can't just come together and shove. But why are you allowed to get behind a guy and shove him? That's never in my life. The Bush push, where that's where they got this name from. Like when that happened, USC versus Notre Dame, I was flabbergasted because I always thought it's illegal to do that. Like whether injury or whatever you're calling it for, it was just, I never heard of it.
Foreign progress should be stopped the minute that somebody touches the guy from behind.
Like you're not allowed in the middle of the field to shove a guy, right? You're not. You can't pick up a guy and pull him. Okay, so why can at the line you just start? That's my thing. Is it's not about
what'll be next though. I mean,
that's the thing.
Meaning to be disparaging, I guess you would say little people. They just throw them over the line of scrimmage. I mean, what's the next extrapolation? Somebody's going to come up with something. But I'm thinking I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of sentiment. You're asking yourself, well, geez, the Green Bay Packers are upset about it. So is that enough to get it over the top to have it ruled out of football? Level playing field. I mean, if nobody's allowed to do it, is that better overall for the teams in the league in terms of fair competition? I just think since they blow the whistle on forward progress, and they usually are very generous in awarding offensive
Yes.
forward progress.
Yes.
The spot you're looking, the guy got stopped 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and all of a sudden he gained 3.
Yep.
And you're thinking, when was he there? And he was there, but at the time he got contacted, he got knocked back into oblivion. So, I mean, why are you always awarding the offense the benefit of the doubt? So in this case, though, forward progress should be blown dead the minute somebody touches the guy from behind. And if it was, then the tush push would be quickly eliminated from the playbook, and you would never see one executed again until they came up with the next thing. But and what would that be? Would that be dwarf bowling? Is that what's going to happen, Lubie? Let's put that out there for April Fool's Day and see if we can get anybody to bite on it. All right. And a guy hit for the cycle yesterday. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of a weird thing. Carson Kelly of the Cubs, first Cub to do so since '93. It's a rarity.
No, the cycle's
Ellie De La Cruz had a chance to hit for the cycle, but instead he had a torpedo bat and he hit one 500 feet when he needed the triple, which is always the most difficult component of the cycle to go ahead and accomplish. But so it happened. I don't know. How exciting is that for you, the cycle? Louis Arise was the first guy to ever do it as a Marlin, and they had been around since '93.
Yep.
And that was 2 years ago? Louis Arise, first guy ever to do the cycle. So a rarity in baseball, but and what is it? I mean, you always buy the cliche, I guess, that one thing about baseball, you never know what you're going to see. And people were alluding to that on opening day when the Yankees hit 3 straight pitches for home runs to open up a ball game on opening day. Never happened before, and unlikely, you would have to think, Lubie, to happen again, at least in our lifetime. So baseball off to a quick start, and as expected, I predicted the Dodgers would go undefeated this year, and so far that's intact. 162-0 for the Los Angeles Dodgers, 6-0 so far. We have 156 games to go. Holy timing, Lasorda. All right, we'll see you back here again on Bleacher Brothers at 10 o'clock with Lon Kruger and his analysis on the Final Four, and we'll talk some about his career as well on Conversations. That's coming up. For Michael Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time as we leave you know that.
The time.
I don't think we accomplished much there, Lubie, but I had you going for a second there with that Tua trade. It's 9:04.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.